So on the topic of WandaVision, you want to just jump into that?
Sure, yeah.
So you had a lot to say about this when I was discussing this with you before, but the funny thing is, we actually did a recording a while ago that I chose not to release because the day I was
Mm,
going to release our original WandaVision discussion, we were just very lukewarm on the series, and then
yeah.
that day is when that episode released with the I believe that was the Pietro reveal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, okay, this is going somewhere. And I decided not to because we're just gonna look like a bunch of assholes. But and before we continue on, I know you guys have been wanting a face reveal on my end for a long time, but I hope you'll enjoy the next best thing to a face reveal. And for those of you who are a little confused, don't worry, this is just a segue into the sponsor of today's video, Ridge Wallet. They were kind enough to send me one of these bad boys, and it's actually pretty nice. It's basically a better way to carry your essentials when you go out. It's light and sturdy, but spacious enough for your cash and credit cards, and it just looks so damn cool. They've got over 30 colors and styles to choose from, a lifetime warranty, and more than 30,000 five-star reviews. You just can't go wrong. And if for some reason you don't like it, no problem. They're so confident that you will like it that they're willing to let you try it out for 45 days, and if you don't think it's the best thing ever, then send it back for a full refund. Consider checking them out now, and if you do, use my code REDTEAM for 10% off with free worldwide shipping so you can have one of your own. Check them out. I'll leave a link in the description below.
So and I was scared also that I didn't have much to say because look, there are huge comic book nerds out there that know lore who've read the Wikipedias because honestly, no one was a Scarlet Witch fan. No one was a Vision and Scarlet Witch fan. Okay. So, but there are people that are such comic book, junkies that they're gonna, you know, read the Marvel wiki or memorize their guide to the Marvel universe. And um, and so like I can't sit here and talk about that I know about the Agatha plot lines and in the comic book and predict where things are going. Um, but and so that's what most of the other videos I've seen on YouTube are doing. They're talking about, well, I've read the comic book, I know the lore, I've studied up on it, so this is what's going to happen. I'm going to spoil it for you. Um, Having watched it, and what people aren't talking about is what a brilliantly layered show this is. Like it, and I didn't realize it. I mean, I kind of realized it hitting episode 4, which is when we go into the real world outside of the show and we meet, Darcy and we're back with Wu and Monica. And I kind of realized that on that episode, but I didn't realize it again until this most recent episode, episode 7. How well put together all of the episodes are. Like, first off, like each of the episodes is a fun episode. The comedy, yeah, it's cheesy, like simple jokes, but they're okay jokes. Like there's some funny jokes in each of them. In the 50s episode, the 60s episode, the 70s episode, the late 80s episode. Each of them has solid jokes. So on that level, it's a great show. Then 2, it's a great show in that they perfectly encapsulate the themes of each of those eras. Whether it be like that, a perfect parody of Bewitched or a perfect parody of Family Ties or Malcolm in the Middle or Modern Family. Like it's just done so seamlessly. I laughed so hard because after the Malcolm in the Middle thing episode, I was just like, well, now that we're modern, what's a modern sitcom like? And then when I watched the episode and they did the Modern Family thing of them jimming the camera and I was just like, I just burst out laughing. I was like, this is so perfect. Like, done so well. Then, if you go back to episode 4, and where Sword is introduced, and all these little bits in those first episodes where Sword is appearing here and there, and you're like, oh, like that was all planned. Like those events happened. Now, if I go back and watch episodes 1 through 3, I can reinterpret them with the new of like knowing things that I've learned in episode 4. So it has this incredible rewatch value. And then we hit episode 7 and you have the Agatha reveal, which makes you reinterpret everything from the beginning. So I rewatched the series again and I was like, oh my God, like there's an entire Agatha plot line like spinning through it that I didn't even notice. That's brilliant. Like where Agatha shows up like, and right before, like in the first episode, they're having the dinner party. Agatha shows up at the door with a pineapple. And then right after that, the boss starts asking them why don't they have children, and everything kind of goes weird. And then in the next episode, they're having a magic show for the children, and you're not thinking about it, but it's like for the children, for the children. Then it's like pushing this idea in their head, like you need to have children. And then she's pregnant, and you actually see her eating that pineapple later, and you're like, oh, what's going on? And then they have the babies, and Agatha comes over and like sprays lavender on the babies and then leaves the room, and then all of a sudden the babies have grown. And you're like, oh my God, like there's this entire Agatha plot line in the background with like pineapples and dogs and everything that like you kind of like was a little off, but then, and everyone asking them about having children, you realize like, oh my God, this whole plot line was going on about her pushing Wanda to have children. It must have something to do with like, she must have some plans for these children. So you had like all of this layering, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's so well put together, like every little thing.
I was gonna ask you, like, the one thing I've noticed is obviously it's this the whole television thing. Isn't Agnes or Agatha, isn't she like the only one who has done that thing where she breaks character and she's like, "Do you want me to redo that again?" Like
Yeah.
there's a scene where like she's about to hold the babies and Vision has a problem with that, and she does this awkward pause, like it's clearly a like like you do
Right.
like when you're recording a television show and someone fucks up their lines. Do we redo that? Was she the only one doing that?
I think so. The problem is there were a few other characters that were acting weird at different
But it
times.
shows later on in episode 7 that the reason that the black guy was acting with the afro was acting weird
Right.
when he was cutting the thing was because she was the one that made him act weird with her magic.
Right. And he's actually the same character that gums up. He's the one that gives gum to Vision in the first episode. I mean, in the second episode before his magic show. And he actually slaps him on the back. So it's actually his fault that Vision is drunk on gum before the magic show. When you go back, you're like, oh man, like he appears to be some sort of henchman controlled by Agatha Agnes. Because they wanted the rabbit to somehow. I don't know if they wanted to pick up the rabbit in order, because it's her rabbit, so maybe the rabbit has some sort of like magical power over her, just like the
Hmm.
pineapple or the lavender. Like she wants to hold the babies, and Vision doesn't want her to hold the babies, so she tells Wanda to redo the scene, and then she's able to get close to the babies, and then they grow up. So, and obviously she
Well,
killed.
the whole theory, the major theory is that she's clearly a witch. At one point, she mentions her husband Ralph,
Yeah,
but he's not there yet. So Ralph could be the main villain of the story, which everyone is theorizing is Mephisto, the devil,
Mephisto. Yeah.
essentially. And apparently, people were citing one of the Marvel cinematic wikis about Mephisto and how he first appeared ever as a fly on the wall. And in this episode, you see it's not really a fly; it's more of a
Yeah, it was a
cicada.
cicada. Yeah.
Right, but still
Oh,
kind of counts, I guess. And not to mention, people are also theorizing that Wanda is going to make a deal that her children are made up; they're not real. But in order for her
right.
children to be real, she has to make a deal with the devil, and this is
Yeah.
how they bring Mephisto into reality for that reality.
Yeah, and I mean there's all the meta stuff in the background about Marvel's rights and everything that are interesting that they're trying to fix with WandaVision, about how Marvel sold off the rights to the X-Men, and so when they did that, Fox had the ability to use Quicksilver, but then Marvel had the ability to use Quicksilver, but not as a mutant. And so now Disney bought Fox, and so they now own the rights to it all. And it's like, how do you bring in Quicksilver? How do you bring in the mutants? How do you bring in the X-Men into the Marvel universe? Is this a way by having like a multiverse thing go down? And so in that sense, like all of the other layering that's so well done, like even just there's so many small things, like Did you know that in Ant-Man and the Wasp, that's where Jimmy Woo first appears.
Right.
In his first scene, he meets Paul Rudd, and Ant-Man's like doing this card trick. And he's like, "Hey, can you teach me how to do that card trick?" Where he makes a card just appear.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on in the episode, there's a joke because he's like on the internet. They're like, "Sir, we've got to go." And he's like on the internet looking at like card tricks. And he's like, "What? No. And so then at the beginning of episode 4, when he meets Monica, he pulls out his business card in the same fashion as Ant-Man did with a trick.
I didn't catch that. That's
Oh,
cool.
no, right. You're just like, oh my God, like what a fucking arc. Like no one's seen Ant-Man and the Wasp. And even if you have seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, are you going to remember that weird aspect about Jimmy Woo and then notice that little card trick thing there? Like the details of everything they're doing with it. I'm just so impressed because plus like just in a general sense, like what a clever way to bring in the X-Men and the Fox universe. Like whatever selective stuff you want to bring in, we'll call it a multiverse merge or whatever, and it'll be great. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of bold, like at this moment, I mean, maybe I'm going to be disappointed in 2 episodes, but like at this moment, I'm just really bowled over by the show. I'm like, wow. What's funny, because we started kind of lukewarm on it, but I guess because of the nature of the show, they're like, look, we know you're going to keep watching, so stay with us. Like
it's gotten better, and I have to commend. I believe her name is Katherine Hahn. Excuse me, Katherine Hahn, who is Agnes. Great actress. Holy shit. Oh my God. I don't know who this woman is. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything else ever.
Oh, she was an Anchorman. She was in a lot of those comedies with Paul Rudd. Yeah.
She is amazing. I love her. What a great actress. And like just like her her acting chops are great. Monica Rambeau getting those powers, because it looks like she has powers now. That was lame. I didn't.
Yeah, I did not like that. I thought that was just, I mean, is everybody going to get powers who are going back and forth between the barrier?
Can't we have just like normal human characters who are badass? Like Jimmy Woo. I love Jimmy Woo. Keep like characters like Jimmy Woo. He's so wholesome. I love him. I hope he's a regular on every show going forward. But
this is the whole thing about why Mutants was such a great idea, is that with mutants you don't have to have a backstory. They just were born that way, and then you can move on. Like you don't need to have they were bitten by a radioactive spider. They were just born with that power. Okay, they're mutants. And so like this is the advantage of mutants, and why the X-Men are great, is you don't need some lame, like what are the chances that you're going to have a whole team of people with 7 or 8 separate really incredible circumstances that cause them to have superpowers? Like that's pretty ridiculous.
There are only so many radioactive spiders and radioactive other animals that can bite you and you can turn into,
Right. Like realistically, what are the chances that the Avengers, which happens because a guy is accidentally hit with gamma radiation, and another guy happens to be given a government super serum, and another guy happens to come up with super great military tech, and another guy happens to come up with, or like, I mean, the other lame, or like I hated like the Vision's origin story in Infinity War. I thought that was just so rushed. Like what? Or I'm sorry, in Age of Ultron. Like it was just so rushed. Like you're incubating a body for yourself, and then all of a sudden it's sentient randomly based on like Jarvis. Like none of it really, like even watching it, I was just like, that seems like a really weird, rushed, improbable like origin story. That like Ultron would be like incubating some pod, and then Thor would hit it with his lightning. And
the Thor thing. That's what I was gonna say. Like there's a whole cut scene with Thor in Age of Ultron that's just it's a little convoluted for my taste. Real quick though, I'm not gonna pretend like I know everything and I just looked it up myself. A lot of where I get this, especially with WandaVision, a lot of where I get this information from is I normally don't shout out other channels, but Screen Crush fucking kills it every week with WandaVision, like Easter eggs and stuff like that. So
they did really good Watchmen stuff too.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
I should have gone to them for that then, because I usually use you because you're my guy. But no, Screen Crush Screen Crush with WandaVision, he's been fucking killing it because he says something about like there's hexagons everywhere
Yeah,
and you
that's the
know
other thing is when you go back and rewatch the episodes, there's all these hexagons everywhere, and that you don't realize like on the rewatch. Yeah. I mean, and obviously like there's the double meaning of hex, it being a spell and it being a hexagon. Yeah.
one thing I was wondering, Agatha is clearly behind everything, but is she behind everything, everything? At one point, a couple episodes back, Vision is at work and he undoes that guy's mind control spell thing, and the guy's clearly hurting, and he's like, make her
Yeah.
stop. Does he say Wanda? I don't think he says Wanda. I just think he
He
says
doesn't,
she.
but he doesn't, but at the same time, like, I mean, Monica was under the spell and clearly thought it was Wanda. So, you know,
It could
the,
still be Wanda, and I hope they're not going to try to get away from that because it almost sounds. Because now I'm
I think it's
confused, and I hope
someone
they
making Wanda. I think it's someone making Wanda to do something.
see. I don't like that.
I mean, if you remember, it's like Agatha has to tell Wanda to tell Vision to let her near the babies. In the first episode, when the guy's choking, Wanda has to tell Vision to save the guy from choking. Like there's a lot of weird stuff like that. So there might be a chain of stuff.
But what I don't want them to do is because the guy goes, "Make her stop." He never specifically says Wanda. When he said her, he could be meaning Agatha. I don't want this whole hex thing to be just her. I don't want that as a cop out because I want Wanda. Very little do you see. You don't see this often. It's very little do you see superheroes having like a complete mental breakdown like Wanda's having. And I think they did it somewhat in House of M, the comic series, which I did read and I did like. But I want everything that's happening now to be mostly Wanda's fault. This horrible thing she's doing, kidnapping people. I want that to be Wanda, not Agatha,
Mm.
because very rarely do we see like heroes having these depressions and these mental breakdowns, and and that's what it seems like it's happening. Wanda had
Yeah.
a huge depression thing, mental breakdown, where she steals Vision and kidnaps these people and forms the hex. That's what we're supposed to believe. I don't want it to be a cop out where it's Agatha all along.
Yeah.
She's behind everything.
I mean, what they're doing very well with the ads in the middle of the show is that each ad like is represents a trauma of her life, which
Hmm.
is really, I mean, it's true. Once you start adding them up, you're like, holy crap, she's been through a lot. Like her parents are killed by a Stark missile. Then she is captured and tortured by Hydra, and given like powers because of this like experimentation. Then, you know, her city, her country is lifted up and dropped onto the ground and her brother is killed. And then and then she's she's then made a fugitive and put in a prison in the middle of the ocean. And
Right.
then her android lover is killed, or no, she has to kill
She
him,
kills
and
him.
then she kills him, and then he's brought back to life through time, and then killed in front of her eyes a second time. Like, and then somebody's deciding to take his body and use it as a weapon against his wishes, right?
Hmm.
Because that's what Sword's doing, right? Sword is clearly like trying to use Vision's body as a weapon, which is against his like final wishes. Um, so like, there's just it's a lot of freaking trauma for the poor woman, like,
Right, and
um,
I want that to stick. I don't want it to be Agatha doing everything. If
yeah,
Agatha is just pulling the strings here and there, that's fine. But I want the whole thing to be Wanda's idea. I want it to be Wanda's doing. And yeah, like I don't want Disney to walk back from that.
yeah.
So
And now they're giving her children and taking the children away. Like it's tough. The thing is, in the comic book, Agatha's not a villain, so a lot of people are like, well, how is Agatha the big bad when she's not a villain in the comic book? So this is why people, there's an idea that maybe Agatha is being threatened by somebody else, or maybe Agatha has a good plan in the end.
well, to be
To
fair, in the comic books, aren't the Skrulls like the villains, but now they're not?
Yeah, I mean they changed stuff around. I think the Skrull, yeah, I mean, yeah, both the Kree and the Skrulls are kind of bad in the comic. The Skrull's a little worse than the Kree, but in the Captain Marvel movie, they made the Skrull refugees good. I think the Skrulls are still bad, but they made some good Skrulls with the Skrull refugees or something. I can't remember. I can't remember Captain Marvel very much.
This was George R. R. Martin's, to bring it back to George for a minute, this was George R. R. Martin's number one complaint about Marvel movies and like Marvel bad guys, is that all they are is just a reflection of the good guy. You know? Like Iron Man, his first villain was I forgot the man's name, but it was Obadiah, and he was basically like evil Iron Man. And then you go to Ant-Man, and Ant-Man's fighting evil Ant-Man, right?
Yeah.
And then you go to Captain America, and Captain America's essentially fighting another man with a super soldier serum that's like evil super soldier guy.
Right. Hulk versus Abomination.
Right.
Spider-Man versus Venom. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
It's always boring. That's why Spider-Man's villains are so great, you know, because they're so much not like him in a sense. But here, normally I would think, yeah, oh, this is boring. She's just evil Scarlet Witch. But it's actually more interesting than that. Like the actress made it great. She's not forgettable like a lot of these like random other villains in all these movies. Actress makes it great. The stuff that she's behind pulling the strings. She's the director at one point of the whole WandaVision show when when the camera pulls back and she's like, shh. Like that's great.
That's what I liked about well, I guess the big bad in Doctor Strange is a completely different kind of thing. And Doctor Strange did have a really fantastic ending. But I guess it is just another sorcerer. I mean, the small bad is another sorcerer. The big bad is a big thing. Yeah, but you're right that it is just. I mean, it's not like Superman versus Lex Luthor, where these are very different types of people. But then again, the Superman versus Nod is just the same, right? You're just doing an evil Superman. Huh. That is. I wonder how many shows are just person versus evil version of the same person.
And what's funny is the writer, when they write these villains, they probably think they're doing like something amazing, you know? Like, here's the good guy. Now, the evil like, we're just gonna make like him, but evil version. It's like a reflection of himself, of what he could be. Like, you're not clever. Everybody does it. You know, it's like Thor and Loki, they're both gods. Like, like it's the same thing every time.
Black Panther and Killmonger.
Big major one, of course. Yeah, that's what Black Panther could have been had his life been, down that path. That
I guess Red Skull is significantly different from Captain America, I guess.
Yeah, but like, they're on both the opposite ends of the war, and like they both have the same super soldier serum thing going on.
That's true. Man, you're right. You really need like a villain that's different,